From the far reaches of the Milky Way galaxy, it's Retro Nerd Girl with a film review for you. Today, I'll be reviewing the movie Demolition Man, released in 1993, starring Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes, and Sandra Bullock. Directed by Brambilla. The synopsis is, John Spartan is a rebellious cop cryogenically frozen and repurposed in the future to recapture his nemesis, crime lord Simon Phoenix. The story. The main character in the film is John Spartan, played by Sylvester Stallone. I, as well as many other people, thought this film was one of Sylvester's created vehicles, because he was really known for that at the time, being a writer and provocateur of his own film projects. But this was not the case for Demolition Man. I suppose the origins of the story starts with Hungarian science fiction writer István Németh. He wrote Holtak Harka, which is translated to Fight of the Dead, published in 1986. Rumor has it that there was a committee somewhere that proved that 75% of Demolition Man is identical to his novel. However, the author receives no writing credit or provisions for his possible influence because the idea was sold to Warner Brothers by someone else. In fact, Németh claims that many popular scripts were often stolen from Russian novelists by the same mysterious seller. Mind you, this is still a rumor because the filmmakers claim any similarities were pure coincidence and said that they were heavily influenced by the book Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, published in 1932. It was first written with a heavy hand of satire. It was removed and then put back in. Although you can't tell that was happening behind the scenes when watching the film. You get the sense that there's a struggle to determine if the film is a seriously plausible sci-fi movie or a dark comedy. As far as the comedy is concerned, I enjoyed it immensely as it was woven into the story as an integral part of the world building. The result is a lot of small ideas about the future that are really fun and really interesting, taken from a lot of pop culture sources from the 80s and a few older eras. But what the film seems to be doing most of all is making a little fun of action movies in general by going over the top in a very bold way. And I think that that's the charm of it. It's not a serious futuristic film. It's more of a mixture of devilish whimsy and action. The pacing. At an hour and 55 minutes, it may be a tad long, but personally I loved every minute of it. The challenge. After the great earthquake of 2010, as the story goes, Los Angeles and San Diego and Santa Barbara merged into San Angeles, a brand new utopia under the guidance of Dr. Raymond Cocteau. Cocteau is the city's savior, setting up a safe, passive, and sterile society without a defense system. He forgot that one little detail. Being the savior to San Angeles is a noble act, of course, but he really desires to continue his reign unchallenged so he can control every aspect of society. He wants to have the leader of the city's underground resistance group, Edgar Friendly, assassinated, and he has a plan to do it, discreetly reviving Simon Phoenix and setting him upon the task of assassinating him. At first it seems like a very clever plan, but thank goodness Cocteau is not the only challenge in the film because he isn't a very smart one. His ego overrides his intelligence, as his whole plan backfires on him horribly. So we're coming to my favorite part of the review, where I get to talk about one of my favorite villains of all time. One of them, Mr. Simon Phoenix. Wow. He and the film's hero, John Spartan, have a rather intense rivalry between each other since 1999, when Simon killed several hostages and framed John for it. They were both sentenced to be cryofrozen until Simon escaped his parole hearing in 2032, with the help of Cocteau rehabilitating him with advanced knowledge of combat and computer skills, making Simon an unstoppable supervillain, storming through San Angeles like a wrecking ball of primitive violence. I mean, these guys are not prepared for him at all. Even though there's no backstory for Simon as to why he's behaving the way he does, you get the sense that he's just enjoying antagonizing the status quo, and especially John Spartan. He's a true, evil spawn. He was just born evil, right? Or maybe there was something in his past that turned him this way. We don't know, and I don't think you need to know after you see what he does. Now, it is kind of curious because you wonder, what does Simon want? In my opinion, I think he just wants chaos. This is what he thrives in and on. He wants to be the head of it, he wants to cause it, and he wants to control it. And that simple knowledge makes it so easy to understand this villain's psychology. He's dangerous, but a simple man dynamically acting on his charisma and a good helping of wicked humor. As well, he's so smart that he manages to stay at least 5 steps ahead of everyone. Now, the empathy. John Spartan is a very likable character in my opinion, because he is pretty simple as well. He has only one desire, and that is to save the innocent by any means necessary, even if it means breaking the rules. In that way, he and Simon Phoenix are like the same face on the opposite sides of a coin. He's the protector of the status quo, but I also think that he intentionally defies it to protect it. They both hate Cocteau's new world and try to change it as soon as they arrive. So I don't know about you, but here's where we have 2 characters that I really adore on both sides of the struggle. So when they get together to fight, my emotions are at a peak state, and I really enjoyed every minute of it as they were, doing all of the puns and all of the one-liners. Wow, I mean, it's a dynamic thing to see on screen. Now, the love interest for our protagonist is Lenina Huxley, whose name comes from a combination of Aldous Huxley and Lenina Crow, who is a character in the book A Brave New World. She is a cop that has been alerted to many of the murders, or quote-unquote murder, death, kills, committed by Simon Phoenix. She is actually very vital to the story because she is pretty much a nostalgia file for all the things that happened in the 1980s and the 1990s. I mean, she would fit in our era just perfectly, wouldn't she? She and her partner are assigned to John Spartan to help him with the apprehension of Simon Phoenix. The chemistry between the modern-aged woman and the brute from the past really works as a means to deliver more hilarious satire through the exposition. Now, the technical aspects. Technically, the film is pretty impressive for 1993. Wow, I mean, The visuals are bold and demonstrates the modern order of this future society. Many of the scenes of San Angeles are just simply gorgeous, and this is a result of taking existing architecture that had a very modern theme to it and then adding paintings in the background to expand the world. I rather like that particular technique personally when I see it in films. Now, the film opens up with a powerful scene of an incredible practical demolition of a real building in Louisville, Kentucky that was nothing short of magnificent. There was even a MTV contest at the time. The contest winner got a chance to actually push the trigger that ignited the demolition, and it's absolutely beautiful to watch that. And it sounds crazy to say, oh, an explosion sounds beautiful. The way it was shot and all the very many angles, it was a spectacle. The scenes of the city in 1999 and the flames had a very visceral feel to it because at the time, in 1993, there were riots in Los Angeles just about 6 months before the filming began on this movie, which influenced the scene. Now, my love for this movie is really in all of the little details that encompass this future world. The culture, the gadgets, the weaponry, the vehicles that really fit all in a practical space for the characters to play in. It's just felt so real. Like you could just jump into the screen and actually join them. The costumes in particular were fantastic, revealing character attributes within the design of them, whether it be amicable, rigid, rebellious, or violent. Simon Phoenix's costume was especially interesting in the future, revealing his character. He had actual parts of rubber car tires on his shoulder as armor, which gave him a very post-apocalyptic aesthetic. I loved it along with the haircut and his colored contact lenses, indicating that this character was not just different than everyone else. He wanted to look like no one else. It was his calling card. I have arrived. That's partly why I love the character. It all worked synergistically together. Now, there was a strong casual military look going on for the police officers, but Cocteau and his assistant had a very tranquil Japanese flair to the design of their costumes. And it was a wonderful way to misdirect the other characters in the film as well as the audience as to their true natures, right? They're not wearing costumes that say I'm a malicious person. They're bringing upon this air of like calmness and tranquility and peace and kindness, but otherwise manipulating people behind the scenes and planning a man's murder. The cryogenic freezing process was a visual set piece for the film that I feel really still holds up today. The science behind our ability to actually freeze a human being and revive him may not be currently something that we're totally convinced of. So it's hard to determine if this isn't possible to do it the way it's done in the film. I like that. Yeah, it could be possible, right? One issue of note, Sylvester Stallone said that the scene was probably the worst 5 hours that he ever had to do in his career. And it looked it too, because he had to be naked to be submerged into a tub of what looks like glycerin. And then he had to have his full naked body cast made of him held in that frozen position. So, oh God, that's pretty uncomfortable to say the least. Now today, most of this would have been done much easier on one of the many techniques that are now available to filmmakers. So it was a chore back then to get that look, but today would be so much easier to do. Now, what we see of the finished movie is just the tip of the iceberg, because the film experienced massive scene cuts that were totally omitted character developments, action scenes, fight scenes, and an entire plot point of John Spartan actually having a daughter. But the many cuts created a ripple effect in the continuity issues that perplex the audience to this day. However, don't fret about it. There's a comic book adaptation and a novelization of the movie that will fill us in on everything that we missed, if we're that curious. Elliot Goldenthal composed the score, and it's no mistake that the film has a very Batman sound to it, because he was the composer for both Batman Forever, released in 1995, and Batman and Robin, released in 1997. The title of the film was inspired by the song Demolition Man, written by Sting and sung by Grace Jones in 1981. It was re-released the same year by Sting's band at the time, The Police. Sting remade the song for the film when he went solo, and it was used in the end credits. Performances. Did you know that originally Steven Seagal was envisioned to play John Spartan, and Jean-Claude Van Damme was to play Simon Phoenix? The idea failed to please both actors. Sylvester Stallone was cast as John Spartan, and I feel it he was actually pretty great in this. And he's pretty much just playing himself. There isn't a whole lot of technique behind his acting style in this, but I felt like it grounded the film. John Spartan is actually the voice of reason for us. He's almost like the audience member saying, hey, all of this stuff is really ridiculous. And without his performance, as it was, we would lose a lot of the humor and the charm that the film has. So get this, can you imagine the role of Simon Phoenix being played by Jackie Chan? It's a stretch, and that is because you've probably never seen Jackie Chan play a villain. Wesley Snipes snagged the role, and he was excellent as Simon Phoenix, giving the character a devilishly unpredictable charisma to the point that he steals every scene that he's in with a raw savvy. I mean, it's just so intense watching him on screen. He's really awesome. If you like that kind of energy in your characters, I know there's some people who are like, he overdid it, but I feel like he was perfect for the kind of character who is a psychopath. I mean, he was perfect. And I just couldn't take my eyes off of him on screen. He was so mesmerizing too. And I think a lot of it had to do with his unique hairstyle that helped capture a lot of the attention. It was said to have influenced professional basketball player Dennis Rodman to begin dyeing his hair very interesting colors throughout his career. And another influence that Simon Phoenix had is his strikingly similar hairdo to the character Blade, played by Wesley Snipes 5 years later. Sandra Bullock had roles in films and TV prior to this one, but this film was her breakout role, setting her up for a string of very popular movies, which led to the eventual Academy Award win. She plays Lenina with a fun, goofy quality, which seems to be a natural kind of acting style that she had at the time. And she's able to pivot from being a very bubbly and energetic personality to a very concerned and serious characteristic in just seconds. Her emotional state as her character often directed the tone of the scenes that she's in, which is what I would call a mastery. Now the best part of the film. Now the best part of the film to me, there's so many incredible scenes, and I feel like the best part of the film is definitely the action. It was incredibly visceral for the time. We've evolved over time to a different kind of style of action films, or action in films. But at the time in 1993, this was amazing. So, hands down, even today, to me, it's still really good. But I liked even all of the little puns that were being flung back and forth between the two characters. I loved all that stuff. It's just kind of puts a smile on my face. Well, there was also another moment in the film that kind of reminded me of Barbarella, where in the setting of 2032, people weren't allowed to actually touch each other or exchange bodily fluids. I thought it was very interesting take on sort of this futuristic place that mankind will eventually kind of put itself in a pocket, trying to be as safe as possible. Now, my enjoyment. The film did very well at the box office and turned out to be one of the most memorable action films of the 1990s. One of the biggest complaints, though, about the film that people just kind of go on and on about, especially modern film reviewers, is that it features major references to Taco Bell or Pizza Hut, depending on what version you've seen. And to me, I really don't care about product placement, because product placement is life. We have products around us all the time. Why not see them in our movies? No big deal. But, in this particular case, they could have made up a name of a fast food chain, but it wouldn't have the same effect, would it? So I feel as if in this particular case, in this specific case, it was cleverly used as a wonderful joke to really exemplify the folly of this new world, that they've taken this fast food joint and kind of made it the pinnacle of all their eating experiences. Like, isn't that kind of hilarious? I think it's very funny. But anyway, it seems as if life imitates art, because Taco Bell's restaurants are now gaining more popularity through the movie and through their own merit of enticing the public with interesting meal choices, and they're also getting fancier every single year. So it's very interesting what's happening to Taco Bell. This future might not be so unreal. And the film goes on to predict a lot of things, or have some eerie similarities to reality. And although it wasn't the first film to do this, the film also predicted a host of technology that we use today. This has been a fan favorite for me. I've been waiting to do this review for such a long time, because this film really delivers bold surprises in an exciting and thoughtful adventure with an incredible showdown at the end. What gets me really excited just thinking about this film, and how much fun it was to watch it in the 90s. It was really awesome, guys. I'm telling you. I remember being in the theater and just loving it. It's a wonderful classic early 1990s action movie with a taste of comedy and sci-fi that works for me. I really, really love this film. My rating is a 9.4. Well, that sums up my review. I hoped you liked it. This is Retro Nerd Girl signing off. Take care, movie lovers. I'm off to my next review.